The general thoughts that we have around any AI powered outcomes is we want to keep it as precise and concise as possible. So having the actual absolute date versus a relative date just makes that content evergreen and also makes it like, okay, this is what is exactly being referenced here. Any dollar amounts, any dates, any numbers that are brought up, we try to call those out and highlight them because ultimately, if you're looking at something for 30 seconds, we want you to get as high bandwidth information as possible.
AI note takers are everywhere, but how do you know which one is right for your team? In this series, I'm going to be talking to the CEOs and co-founders of some of the top AI note-taking tools out there to learn about some of the more advanced features they offer. We're going to dive into things like their HubSpot integration, how easy they make it to customize the notes for different teams and use cases, how they handle data security and privacy, and other key features that really make them stand out. And why does that matter to Arrows? If you're syncing your meeting notes into HubSpot, Arrows can read that data and automatically suggest the right updates to your sales rooms. So you can update things like next steps, milestones, value props, and Arrows will even suggest new content that should be added to your sales room based on what you discussed in your meeting. All right, let's get into it. Hey, Ali, thanks for joining. I'm really excited to chat with you today. As some of the people who are watching this might know, I did this test of 22 AI note takers. I had actually not heard of Circleback before, but it was one that was mentioned to me to test out, and then did this whole big test, and I was really, really impressed with the quality of the notes from Circleback. And so I rated Circleback in my top 3 of all the 22 that I tested, and was really impressed with very specific features and how detailed the notes actually got. But I know there's a lot more to it too, so I'm excited to chat with you and kind of get into the full demo of Circleback so everyone can learn more about it.
Yeah, thanks for including us, Kim, and excited to be here and show you everything that you can get out of Circleback.
Cool. Yeah, so if you want to start by telling us a little bit about kind of you and Circleback and how the company started.
Sure, yes. My co-founder and I started Circleback while working full-time as software engineers in 2023. We left our jobs to do Circleback full-time in July of 2023, and we're in the Y Combinator Winter 24 batch. We sort of arrived at this from working at bigger companies where internal knowledge wasn't well managed. A lot of times you would need to repeat a lot of meetings that you had with people just because that context wasn't easily discoverable or documented anywhere. And that was sort of the initial problem we were trying to solve. While building that, we realized to get to a point where you can actually go back and easily search and find things, the gratification or the aha moment needs to be much earlier. So we focus on providing just really good notes and action items from your meetings, which is still a big part of the product and something that we make better every week. A good meeting is one where you're making decisions on what's going to happen and you're sort of providing the instruction manual for what's going to be done in that meeting. So doing more with that knowledge that we have access to help teams get things that they would previously do manually after meetings automatically, and not just for themselves, but on the scale of the whole department or the whole organization, which is what we enable in automations. And I'm excited to show you that. And then beyond that, we also want you to be able to capture any conversation that you have. So whether it's in person, we have mobile apps for that, or whether it's online, and to help you get more out of everything that is said in your conversations. Cool. So this is what you see when you first open up Circleback. You see a list of your upcoming meetings. When you hover over a meeting, you get more context about who you're about to meet with. If we've met previously before, I'll also see a list of the previous meetings that we've had, so I can quickly jump in and see, okay, what did we talk about last time? Was there anything I was supposed to do? As I mentioned, you can also use Circleback for in-person meetings. So there are a couple of ways. Beyond toggling whether Circleback joins a meeting or not from here, you can also add Circleback to a meeting by pasting the link to a Zoom, Google Meet, WebEx, Teams, any sort of meeting here. You can also record an in-person meeting that you have either on the web, on desktop, or on the mobile app. With this, you can also capture a specific screen, or you can also import an audio or video file that you have. So whether this is something you recorded on voice memos on your phone prior, or it's a recording of a past Zoom meeting, you can import it. Our search helps you find meetings using several different things. So you can search for someone's email, or you can search for the domain name of a company to see, okay, who have we met with from that company? It's also AI powered, so you can use it to get answers to questions using the context of all the meetings that you have access to, not just your own meetings. So for example, I was meeting with some customers at South by a couple weekends ago. I remember one of them had mentioned about their specific use case for Circleback. I can ask this question, how is Sarah using Circleback? And this reminds me, okay, yeah, she had renamed her Circleback bot that joins to be named Lizzie Benson, which is like an AI assistant character she's made. And not only do I get an answer to that question, but I can see where the answer came from. And if I click into this, it'll open the exact part of the meeting where the answer came from, so I can add more color to that AI-powered answer. As I mentioned, I can also search for domain. So if I wanted to see, for example, who from Stripe we've met with, I could just type in that domain and get a list of answers. Or I can also search for a meeting by its name. So I know I had done a training call for a specific customer. I can go ahead and open it up. When you open a meeting, this is what you see, a list of the action items at the top. These are automatically generated and assigned. You can also reassign them if you want to other folks or make any edits. Any text that you see on Circleback is editable and automatically saved. That's followed by the notes. All notes always start with an overview. This is sort of the TLDR of the most important bits that were discussed. You can add more details here if you wanted. And then the topics that were discussed. You can go to the transcript tab to see a recording of the meeting as well as the transcript. So I can click into this part to watch that portion of the meeting. If I wanted to, I can send this to someone else on my team by just highlighting it and clicking share moment, or leaving a comment if I wanted to call out something that was discussed here. The assistant also has full context of the meeting here. So I can, for example, write a short follow-up email, and it'll go ahead and do that using the context of everything I said and everything else that was said in the meeting. We can also expand this here. And you can see it includes details like how I'd said I'd follow up in 6 weeks in that email. I could just copy this and send this off. One more thing here is that you can also share a meeting. So there are a couple of ways of sharing. You can get a shareable link that you can send to anyone. They don't need to be a member of your team or even have a Circleback account. They can open the meeting and look at the notes, the recording. Alternatively, you can share it with other people on your team. So you can either share it with a whole team or specific individuals. And that also gives them access to all the context relevant to the meeting so they can see results from it in their search as well. Otherwise, any meetings that you have on Circleback is not shared with anyone unless you use the sharing functionality here, or you create automations to have certain types of meetings be shared, which is what I'm going to show you next. So automations is a really powerful tool in Circleback that helps you automatically take action on details that happen in your meetings. So I have an automation here that is for customer conversations. I have this set to run after any meeting that has the demo tag or any meeting that has the customer interview tag. Meetings are automatically tagged on Circleback. You can also add other conditions based on the participants or the meeting name. So if I wanted to just have this run on any meeting that also includes demo in its name, I could do that as well. I have it generate these customer insights that I care about. This is sort of the gateway to doing custom outcomes from meetings, which is something you brought up earlier in terms of getting custom notes. This one specifically is just for identifying those details. So I have it identify the number of employees, whether or not they're an existing Circleback customer or not, what is the name of their company, and then why they use Circleback. So if any of this comes up in the meeting, it's automatically identified and extracted in this specific structure. I then have those get sent to a specific Slack channel. I could also include the notes and action items as well. And I also have any meetings that match those conditions get shared with everyone so the whole team has access to these if we ever need to go see how our customers talk about our product. You can also add other steps to an automation. So for example, I could have HubSpot contacts or deals be automatically updated. And how this works is that we basically look up the email addresses of the people that were invited. If there are any matching contacts or deals with those people, they'll get automatically updated with a new meeting object that has all the details from the meeting as well as the outcomes that you choose. So I could just choose to put the meeting notes and the customer details that were identified in HubSpot.
For the action items, when you were showing that, does that show up as tasks, or is that all inside like a note inside the HubSpot record?
So right now, that is inside of the meeting that gets added to HubSpot. We're slowly rolling out new additions. So for example, with Adio a couple of weeks ago, we added support for creating tasks, and that's something we'll be doing with HubSpot and Salesforce as well. There are also other steps that you can add to an automation. So what I showed earlier was insights. You can also use insights. We have a bunch of templates here. So to identify any questions that come up in the meeting, if that's something you wanted, or generate a follow-up email using a template that you have, you can have those be automatically generated. There are a bunch of use cases. You can pretty much use insights for a very large number of use cases. We provide some templates here as sort of a starting point, but we've seen some pretty creative use cases of that. And then for any integrations that we don't have directly here, we have a couple of ways which are documented on our support site. So you can use Zapier to connect to any other apps that aren't directly listed here. And you can also use our webhook integration to either build your own custom integration or use something like make.com as well. And on these, you're able to get all the details of the meeting, including the recording, the transcript, etc.
I know a lot of people are interested in getting the full transcript from tools, so that's awesome. You can do that. I had one other question for you on this. When you said the automatic tagging in the beginning, does that mean you're looking at the call and you're identifying this as a demo, or you're identifying this as like an existing customer call? So people don't need to go in and like tag them after the fact or before the meeting happens?
Exactly. So you can actually tag meetings before they happen or after they happen. But once you have a set of tags created, we look at, okay, what are the previous meetings that you have tagged with that tag? And then when a meeting ends, we apply the most relevant ones.
Awesome. That's cool.
And then last thing I want to show is something I alluded to earlier, which is the ability to share and enable automations across your team. So this automation that I have created, I could also go ahead and share with everyone else on the team. You can also create one for specific use cases or specific departments. And then that way, one person can sort of be in charge on dialing in an automation that's relevant for the organization and share that out so it can happen not just after their own meetings, but any meetings that anyone on the team has as well. And then on the tagging piece, I'll just quickly show you. So for our meeting here, I can right click this meeting and add a tag to it. And then the tags also show up in the meetings page here as well. So one thing I showed here was this customer details insight. I'll show you how that looks once I go to the insights page. So it's generated as a table like this because I had created specific outcomes that I wanted. For a number of employees, for example, with True Metrics, that never came up in the call with this customer, but I can see, okay, they were already a customer before the call. This is the name of their company, and this is why they had mentioned they're using Circleback, which is something I wanted identified as part of that insight. You can also see there is a timestamp link. So if I click this, it'll take me to that part of the meeting where this insight came from.
One question here on this one. How is it identifying that it's an existing Circleback customer, for example?
This is based on the context of what we talked about. So they had probably mentioned that like, hey, yeah, we've been using Circleback for X number of months. I'll pause there in case you have any questions. I covered quite a bit, and I'm sure there are things you'd want me to double click into.
Let's talk about data and privacy. So I think the one thing that feels unique to me is you just showed like, you can set up workflows for like if this is a demo or if this is a customer call, then share it with your team. But otherwise, it sounds like the default is that it's not shared with anyone. So if you're having a one-on-one with someone on your team, for example, it's not like that's going to be distributed across the entire company. You can kind of choose which types of meetings get shared.
Exactly. We don't want people to worry about recording conversations on Circleback because it's going to be inadvertently shared. So nothing is shared on the platform by default. And the only, like, even admins can't access meetings from other people unless it's been shared with them. And we use industry leading practices for handling customer data. So everything's encrypted at rest and in transit. We're SOC 2 Type 2 certified, and we have done external security pen tests on our infrastructure, which is available on our security site at security.circleback.ai. And then also anything that you delete on Circleback is irreversibly deleted. So that's why we have a big red confirmation button to do that. And that includes the recording, any other data associated like the insights, the action items, the transcript, all of that. And then one option that we also have for folks is you can set custom data retention policies as a team on Circleback. So from the settings, you can go ahead and say, I actually want recordings to, for example, be deleted after 7 days by default. Or I want transcripts to be deleted after 30 days, but keep everything else. Or you can actually just have all meeting data be deleted based on a custom set retention policy. And then you can also use Circleback without saving any audio or video recordings at all. And the way you do that is by going to account settings and just turning off recordings. And that way, we only transcribe the meetings, and there's no audio or video recording stored. And if Circleback joins as a meeting participant, it also sends a message in the chat that lets folks know audio or video recordings from the meeting are stored. And for most use cases, this is sufficient because folks aren't going back and like actually watching the video or listening back to the audio. They just care about the outcomes, which is what we had initially built the product to do anyways. We added recordings later on.
So many people are using these note takers in some capacity, and some that are bots that are joining the calls, some that are not. And I think there's still some hesitation for some teams to have anything being recorded, and people still feel like they want to take manual notes. I think the thing that comes up is people feel like their customers or their prospects won't be as forthcoming with information because they know it's being recorded.
Yeah, I mean, we've even since we started Circleback seen a big shift around the perception of this. I think ultimately every meeting is going to be AI enabled in some way in the coming years. And there will be different ways of capturing, and we want to support all of those. So whether you want to do no recordings or you want to do recordings, but I think the perception around it will change from like, oh, I'm being recorded and every word that I'm saying is captured perfectly, to more so that like, hey, I'm using this tool because it's going to let me be more present in our conversation and it's going to let me do a better job for you or as a teammate, whether you're in a client relationship or just the coworker relationship. And I think, I mean, even with Circleback today, any conversation that I like, the coffee chat that I had with a customer in person, I wanted that to be on Circleback because I knew there were things that I would want to reference later that if it wasn't captured with Circleback, I wouldn't have access to. And I think as Circleback and other tools that we use become just much better at helping us do our jobs, we just will want to have the data there. And yeah, that's ultimately what we want to support for our customers, which is also to go back to the data privacy and sharing piece. We want you to not have that worry of like, but if I record this, there's going to be inadvertent access, or if I record this, this person's going to feel uncomfortable. I think the framing around all of this has been shifting and will continue to shift to the point where it's just assumed that you're using a Circleback in all of your conversations.
Cool. So it sounds like you're using it for your in-person meetings too. I know you said you have a mobile app. So is that a situation where you're like, okay, I'm having this meeting with someone over coffee. I'm just going to say, hey, can I record this on my phone? And that's kind of how you would do it. I've never done that yet. I have my recorders join all my Zoom calls, but I've never done anything in person yet.
Yeah, I think usually if I'm talking to someone, they're already aware of Circleback, and if they're not, I just tell them, hey, is it okay if this will just give me good context on the call afterwards? And one thing I also do is just I have them receive the email of the notes afterwards, which if they haven't used Circleback before, they find quite fascinating to see, oh wow, like this is actually what we talked about, and it's helpful for them too. So it serves everyone in the conversation, not just me.
The one other thing that I just want to call out, the thing that I was really impressed with about your notes that I called out in my review of Circleback was you were one of maybe two of the tools that I tested that actually called out like specific dates that were talked about during the call. So like I did a fake sales call to test all of these AI note takers. And so a lot of the other note takers would say like, oh, they want to implement this quarter or next. And Circleback was the first one I saw where you specifically said Q1 2025 and then implement Q2 2025. And then you had like specific dates in there too. I don't know if you have like any thoughts or reasoning behind that, but I just thought that was unique. Not something I ever thought like, oh, I need that. But when I saw that, I was like, that's unique and helpful because if something happens to this deal and I go back and reference it, then I have to think about, okay, when was this quarter? When was next quarter back when we had this call where it's like automatically I can reference it in Q4 this year and be like, oh, they wanted to get up and running in Q1.
Yeah, I think the general thoughts that we have around any AI powered outcomes is we want to keep it as precise and concise as possible. So having the actual absolute date versus a relative date just makes that content evergreen and also makes it just for at any point that you look at it, it's easier to digest like, okay, this is what is exactly being referenced here. And we do the same thing with all important details like any dollar amounts, any dates, any numbers that are brought up. We try to call those out and highlight them because ultimately, if you're looking at something for 30 seconds, we want you to get as like high bandwidth information as possible without having to spend a bunch of time like scrolling through paragraphs.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's exactly what I loved about it when I saw it too. Okay, cool. So this was awesome. Thanks for going through all of this. Anything else that you want to highlight? Anything that you all are working on next, or to kind of look out for in the future for anyone listening?
Yeah, I think the two sort of vectors that we see is like one, enabling you to have every kind of conversation that you have on Circleback. So we've done a lot of work to make our desktop app easier to use, whether you want to use a meeting participant or you just want to record just audio without a meeting participant. With our mobile apps, making it easy to capture in-person conversations where, we automatically identify the participants using their voice. So you don't have just the generic participant one, participant two. And then enabling Circleback to be more powerful for teams. So in terms of being able to manage automations from a centralized point, manage settings for a team from a central point. That's all things that we're working on, and then continue to make our foundations better. So the AI powered outcomes that you get, that's the notes, the action items, the insights you get, and things like search. So being able to just find any bit of information out of like potentially thousands of meetings that you have access to really easily.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so for anyone who wants to check out Circleback, try it out. They just go to your website. Is that the best way for people to get started?
Yeah, circleback.ai, we have a free trial. It takes about, I think, a few minutes to get up and going. That's one thing we've tried to keep simple as the product becomes more advanced. So like just getting you in your first meeting, because we find that's usually the magical moment for customers.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, this was really fun. Thanks so much for sharing all of this. I'm a big fan of Circleback as a person who just kind of learned about you, so I'm excited to keep following you all.
Thanks, Kim. It was great chatting.
Thanks.